Yo, what is going on, guys? My name is Tyler. I'm part of the FF Mediators here on the Face Off Sports Network. After a wild week 3 where we had some shocking and spectacular performances from some seasoned veterans that we hadn't heard from in a while, shout out to Hunter Henry and Mark Andrews, we've had some shakeups here in our rankings. So let's see where these guys kind of fit into our week 4 tight end rankings and streamers. And so, in order to do that, let's just start right off at our tier 1 for the week. Now, these guys are no shocker here. It is the same guys I had from last week: Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and Tucker Kraft. Now, with that being said, the only of these three guys that had a notable performance last week was Trey McBride. He had 5 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. That Cardinals offense seems to run through him. Marvin Harrison continues to struggle and left a lot of air yards and passing yards out on the field for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. So until further notice, Trey McBride is obviously the number 1 target here. He will stay in the elite tier because of that usage. So we will see how long he can last. The other two guys actually had knee injuries. Shockingly enough, we have Brock Bowers and Tucker Kraft, who still remain in this tier despite not having a great week last week. Brock Bowers only had 4 catches for 38 yards, no touchdowns. So that was kind of a disappointing week from what we typically get from Brock Bowers there. And then Tucker Kraft actually didn't do very well either. Uh, the Packers tight end finished 3 catches, 29 yards, no touchdowns either. I think both of these guys most likely just had some injury issues that they were kind of dealing with. Maybe they were being held back a little bit just to kind of test those knees out, make sure they were still healthy. Both these guys are still young. I see their role continuing going forward. And the reason I kept Tucker Kraft up in the tier 1 this week is because he's going up against a juicy matchup against the Dallas defense, who, without Micah Parsons, has looked drastically different from last year. So I think the Packers will score a lot of points this week. Obviously, Jaden Reed is still out. None of the other wide receivers have really stepped up to this point. And I truly think the Packers will put up enough points to where Tucker Kraft will still be reliable as a tight end option and worthy of the tier 1 tight end status. With that being said, we're going to move to my tier 2 status here. And that will lead off with Jawan Johnson at number 4, who has jumped Tyler Warren for me after what continues to be impressive performances from the Saints tight end. He has 6 catches on 8 targets for 51 yards. He played 90% of the snaps. I mean, this dude is unbelievable. He is a huge part of the Saints offense. Chris Olave, while he is being used, is not performing as well as he probably should be. Rashid Shaheed and the rest of the litany of wide receivers that the Saints have can't do anything either. So I think until further notice, Jawan Johnson will stay here in tier 2, if not go up to tier 1, just because of said usage, like we were talking about with those elite guys. Tyler Warren is here at 5. The rookie didn't look great last week for the Colts, but that being said, he's had such elite usage here in the first few weeks that I think truly what happened was he just kind of got game scripted out of this, right? The Colts end up beating the Titans 41-20. He still had 3 catches for 38 yards, which is not terrible from a tight end, but he just kind of took a hit from, I think, the game script. Like I said, I think that will continue to look up going forward. And then this week, too, they play the Rams. You just saw the Rams have a shootout with the Eagles. And so I truly think that by the time this week is over with, you will have a shootout that will go back and forth. And I think Tyler Warren will continue his ways from the first 2 weeks instead of last week. And then you also see Jake Ferguson here at number 6. Now, this goes without saying, obviously, but the Cowboys did lose CeeDee Lamb, who will no doubt have a big impact on the Cowboys offense overall. So the reason that he still sits here at 6 is because he ended up being the tight end 4 on the week, guys. Let me take my graphic down here so you can see me and look me in the eyes whenever I say this. He was the tight end 4. Do you know what his stat line was? He ended up with 13 catches on 14 targets and 82 receiving yards. Most of that obviously came after CD was out. Dak looked to him heavy and often, and I look for that to continue until they can find somebody to step in and fill CD's shoes, which I don't even know if it's possible. George Pickens could step up. He could see an increase in workload. Maybe they get Cavante Turpin or Jalen Tolbert in. But I truly think that if you need a possession guy on the Dallas Cowboys that is going to stay and be relevant until CD comes back, I believe that's going to be Jake Ferguson. And so for me, he's still here in my tier 2, and I can't wait for this to continue. And as Micah Parsons comes back, right? The Packers come to play Dallas this week. So we're going to see how that looks, and hopefully it turns out to be a good game. Let me flash my graphic back up here so we can get our number 7 tight end on the board, and that is Sam Laporta here. Now, the Lions went out and stunned the Ravens Monday night, not necessarily in terms of people didn't think they could win this game, but I think a lot of people expected the Ravens to win. And Sam Laporta, while he didn't play a huge part of that, he was still involved, right? And that's what you need from these guys. He had 4 catches for 33 yards, so not a whole lot of production, but he's a week in and week out threat to score a touchdown, especially if they're going to score 5 touchdowns in a week. Now, yes, this week it was 2 for Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 for David Montgomery, and 1 to Amon-Ra, but those are going to switch around every week. And you saw last week where Jared Goff threw multiple touchdowns. I think it was 4. And so that is always a possibility with this Lions offense. They can get hot and heavy real quick. And so I think that Sam Laporta still belongs in the tier 2 slot here, along with these other guys. So now we've got through those first 7 guys. Tier 3 is going to look a little bit different than it did for me last week. And this is kind of where I said some of those veterans come into play who had big weeks. I think they have a chance to continue to have a big week this week just based off of the situation. And so without further ado, my tier 3 is actually going to be kicked off by Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry was the tight end 1 this past week with 8 catches for 90 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Now, I know, obviously, without those touchdowns, he's definitely not the tight end 1, and touchdowns are not a very sticky stat, right? However, they play the Carolina Panthers, and although the Falcons did not look great against the Panthers last week, I expect this Patriots offense to at least look a little bit more competent. I don't think the Panthers defense is something that is that stout to where Hunter Henry will not be able to produce. And I don't really think they have very many other options there. They had Boutte, who showed up a little bit earlier in the year. Diggs looks lost. I know he's getting catches, but I feel like every time I turn around, he's not. On the field, I don't see it, but I know it shows up in the box score. So right now, I'm going to take the most consistent target on the Patriots against a Carolina defense that I don't, like I said, don't think is that great. So give me Hunter Henry to possibly get another touchdown this week. And then I actually have Dalton Kincaid here. Now, I had some hesitancy in putting Dalton Kincaid here. He finished with 5 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. And my main concern with Dalton Kincaid here is the fact that Josh Allen spreads the ball around a lot. And so James Cook is still going to get his touchdowns. Josh Allen could very easily vulture a few rushing touchdowns himself, but the passing game is so spread out here in Buffalo, right? We don't know whether it's going to be Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Elijah Moore, or Dawson Knox, at the other tight end that they have there. But really and truthfully, Dalton Kincaid stood out this past week against a Miami defense that was definitely not looking great as the season starts. And they actually play the Saints this week, who are also not a great defense. As you just saw, the Seahawks put up, I think it was 48 or 44 on them as well. So you can score points on this Saints team. I think Dalton Kincaid probably falls in the end zone another time this week. So for me, he is staying here in my tier 3. And then the next name is the guy you see on the screen here is TJ Hawkinson. Now, I actually benched TJ Hawkinson in one of my main leagues this week, and it kind of bit me in the butt a little bit, not going to lie. 5 catches for 49 yards and 1 touchdown. My process was, hey, Carson Wentz is the starting quarterback. No, the offense hasn't looked great in terms of JJ McCarthy being there, but I just don't want to deal with the backup quarterback against the Bengals, which that was probably a bigger scenario than maybe I thought. I thought really and truthfully, I thought maybe the Bengals, this would be a high scoring affair going back and forth. And maybe Justin Jefferson and Jordan Mason and those guys would get a little bit more involved. Um, but TJ Hawkinson took the role this week. The one thing I will caution you with here, I have him in my tier 3 because he had that rapport with Carson Wentz last week. And I don't know how long it will take this guy to get ramped up, but Jordan Addison is back from suspension this week, something to kind of monitor. So that target volume may get spread out even a little bit more. But I think, like I said, the rapport with Carson Wentz that he had last week, I think is going to continue to shine through this week. And we'll just see how it continues to go. He could always score a touchdown, as it looks like the KOC offense continues, right? We've still got backup quarterbacks and quarterbacks who have been on the team for very limited amounts of time who are actually successful in this offense. So I will continue to put TJ Hawkinson here for this week. Next week, we'll see what Jordan Addison's involvement looks like, and then we'll kind of go from there. Rounding out the rest of this, I've got Brenton Strange and Kyle Pitts. Brenton Strange has continued to be a consistent force for the Jags. He had 6 catches for 61 yards this past week against Houston. And if you go back and you look at his game log, no, he's not ranking high in terms of like tight end rank finishes, but he's consistent. He's got 4 targets, 5 targets, 7 targets. Like he is trending upwards. And so you still have Parker Washington who's getting like 11 targets. Travis Hunter has fallen off for now. They're not using him on offense the way that we thought they would eventually. And Brian Thomas, I don't know what's going on with Brian Thomas, guys. He looks scared to death to catch the ball, run across the middle of the field, do anything right now. And so I'm going to take Brenton Strange just on the upside that he falls into the end zone this week. They are playing San Francisco, which could be, a game where they have to score some points. If Brock Purdy's back, especially, they may have to keep up a little bit more, even though Mac Jones has kind of been dealing here. And then you got Kyle Pitts, right? Now, I know everybody's tired of Kyle Pitts, and you're like, well, he didn't look good last week. And so why is he still here in tier 3? And really and truthfully, it boils down to this. Once Kirk Cousins came in the game, this offense moved a little bit better. He seemed to target Kyle Pitts a little bit more. He had 4 receptions for 39 yards. Now, I don't necessarily predict Kirk to be the starter this coming week. I do think Michael Penix gets back in there, and I think this offense will look much better in week 4 here against the Commanders. So I see this game kind of similar. They're going to have to score points. Drake London hasn't done a whole lot. None of the other receivers have done a whole lot. Really and truthfully, right now, the one consistent factor on the Falcons has been Bijan. And then while I know it's not like the elite guys, we're still taking shots on touchdowns and just good usage in general. 6 targets for Kyle Pitts. You're going to take as many targets as you can get at the tight end position. It's not like Jake Ferguson with 14 last week or Jawan Johnson, who has been at like 11 several weeks, right? So that's why he's down in a tier for me. He's still in tier 3, which doesn't mean that I'm expecting him to go off. I expect him to have a possibility to get in the end zone, like I said, versus the Commanders. And then my last tier here is all of my guys outside of the top 12. And so we'll pop that up on screen here. As you can see, I have Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, Harold Fannin Jr., and Njoku, Mark Andrews, the tight end 2 on the week. Chiggle Conquo, Dallas Goddard, Jonnu Smith, Kate Otten, Colson Loveland, Dalton Schultz. And then the last name on the board here is somebody to monitor, and that is Oronde Gadsden for the Chargers. So let's talk about some of these guys just a little bit individually. Zach Ertz, obviously, echoed the same sentiment as I did with TJ Hawkinson last week. I said I would be concerned with the backup in Marcus Mariota for the Commanders there, and rightfully so. Right, he ended up with 3 catches for 38 yards, no touchdowns, but he only played 52% of the snaps, which was kind of interesting to me. So he's still here. Obviously, he's had better usage the previous weeks. If Jaden Daniels comes back, that's kind of what I'm expecting this week. That's why he's here. He could easily move down depending on if Marcus Mariota starts instead of Jaden Daniels. But as of right now, I'm expecting Jaden Daniels to play um, this week. Next, we have Travis Kelsey, which Travis Kelsey, guys, you saw the heated exchange with Andy Reid. They're obviously not happy with the involvement and probably the production they're getting out of Travis Kelsey at this point. He did still have 7 targets. He only had 4 catches for 26 yards, though. And the main reason he's still this high for me is because he goes on next week and he is going to end up playing the Ravens. And we saw exactly what happened last night or Monday night, I guess I should say, when the Lions came in. They gave the Ravens all they could handle as far as offense goes. Now, do I think that the Chiefs' offense is humming like the Lions are? No, not necessarily. But I think there is still a possibility that he gets in the end zone and that Patrick Mahomes and him kind of get back to that mind meld that they used to have. Next here, I have Harold Fannin and Njoku. Really and truthfully, I think the big note here is that Harold Fannin is still over Njoku for me. These guys are just people that are going to be on the field each week, right? Njoku had 7 targets, 5 catches for 40 yards. And then if you go and you look at Harold Fannin Jr. this past week, let me get his stats pulled up here. He actually had 4 targets, 3 catches for 25 yards against a tough Packers defense. So I don't really put any stock into that. But these guys are going to continue to split work. So for me, that's why they're back to back. That's why I continue to have them back to back. And I really look forward to seeing which of these tight ends is actually going to come out on top and actually win this workload. They do play the Lions this coming week, which could prove to be a little difficult. It's another reason I have them down in this tier. And then let's talk about the number 2 tight end on the week, guys, and Mark Andrews, right? The Lions absolutely schemed out Zay Flowers this Monday Night Football. And Mark Andrews was the benefactor of that. It looked like the Mark Andrews of old in terms of catching the ball and scoring. I don't necessarily know that he looked the same on the field, but he was being used like Mark Andrews used to be. So he's here, like we've mentioned before, with Travis Kelsey. They play the Chiefs, obviously. So I expect this game to be close. I expect this game to have a decent over under, and I expect it to probably hit the over depending on what that is. And so there's always an opportunity for Mark Andrews to continue his run, but he's still down here in the category of tier 4 where my rankings are kind of similar to streamers at this point. These are guys you could probably pick up off the waiver wire or people who, if you're just looking for touchdown upside and not necessarily elite usage, that you could throw in your lineup and try to get there. Number 18, I have Chigokonkwo, the athletic profile tight end from the Titans. He continues to be used. It's just that the Titans offense is not looking great currently. And I think that's going to improve. Now, with that being said, actually, um, today, Tuesday, the head coach, Brian Callahan, actually transferred play calling duties over, I believe, to the passing game coordinator. And so maybe this opens up the offense a little bit, gets a little bit better rhythm flowing. Um, but Okonkwo is still he's still relevant, guys. He's got 5 catches for 66 yards. Um, and I think he's still going to be relevant. Now, Dallas Goddard comes in at number 19 for me. I had him low, I think, last week because of his injury, and I thought I left him low originally. But then the game started, and I was like, man, I don't see Goddard doing anything. And then lo and behold, he catches one catch for 33 yards and a touchdown. And so, that gave you a decent fantasy day there. He ended up right at 10 points with that. So, I mean, that's the ideal streamer right there, right? Like in terms of he scored a touchdown. Obviously, you hope for better usage, but he scored. That's what we're looking at the tight end position whenever we get there to this point. Okay. So then we'll speed through a few guys here. Johnny Smith, he just continues to look decent with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's going to stand out a ton. I think he's just going to kind of be relevant as the probably the second target there, maybe third, depending on how you look at Calvin Austin. And then number 21 here, Kate Otten. I find interesting this week because Mike Evans is actually going to be out. He's going to miss a few games here with the hamstring, and Egbuka was also injured, right? So I think Egbuka will obviously be the focal point of the offense. We will see if Chris Godwin comes back from injury, which I do not think he will this week. But even if they do, I expect it to not be um, that big of a deal. They will not try to factor him in super quickly, right? But I do think there is a chance that he comes back and contributes just a little bit. But that being said, with Kate Otten, right? So this past week had no targets on 66 snaps, right? It's a 92% snap share for Kate Otten, but I'm looking at this in terms of an opportunity standpoint. Whenever you have Jalen McMillan who's out, you have Mike Evans who is out, Egbuka's hurt, Chris Godwin could be out at this point, right? This ball is going to have to go to somewhere for the Bucks to be successful. Bucky and Rashad White can only do so much, and Baker loves to throw the ball. So to me, it's going to go to Kate Otten. It's going to go to Egbuka, and look out for Sterling Shepard too. He could be a good ad as well. Number 22, we have Colston Loveland. Now, Colston Loveland actually had a little bit of an injury this past week, but they've come back and said it's nothing that's too serious. And so I still have him here uh, at the end at 22 in my tier four. He just kind of goes along, like I said, with these streamers. He was looking pretty decent, if I'm not mistaken. Cole Kmet ended up catching a touchdown after Loveland went out. Um, yeah, Loveland had 3 targets, 1 catch for 31 yards. Similar to Dallas Goddard, he just didn't score a touchdown. So I'll take this Bears offense that kind of seems to be trending up a little bit. Obviously, Rome is the one at this point. So let's see how they continue to get these rookies involved in both Burden and Colston Loveland. As it looked like this past week, you saw the youth kind of shine bright. 23, Dalton Schultz, he's just going to be on the field. This Houston offense looks terrible, but when you get down to this point, you're honestly just looking at guys that you know are going to play. And so for me, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm putting Dalton Schultz in there. He had 6 targets this past week. You're hoping he falls in the end zone. And then the guy that I want to talk about is actually someone that I want us to keep an eye on, and that is Oronde Gadsden from the Chargers. So I'm going to get his stats pulled up here real quick. So he had 7 targets, 5 catches, and pulled in 46 yards with that. Now, we wonder why he was healthy and active the first 2 weeks, but and the reason he got to play this week is because of Will Disley being sidelined because of a knee. Now, both Tucker Fisk and Tyler Conklin played more snaps than Gadsden did. However, it was very evident that Justin Herbert liked Gadsden very own. He was the only one that was really utilized like a legitimate pass catcher here for the Chargers. And it's just somebody that I want to continue to monitor going forward, right? If you're getting 7 targets at a tight end position, that's great. Gaston was a guy that I was high on coming out of Syracuse last year, all throughout the offseason. It was just kind of unfortunate that he landed with the Chargers, and then Will Disley was there, and he kind of got in this little muddled situation. And we saw that the first few weeks, right? He never really stood out, and so he was a healthy and active. But I think if Gadsden continues and Disley continues to miss time, I think that you could start to see a role change here for Gadsden and maybe kind of develop some more rapport for Justin Herbert and see if in this Chargers offense, where the Chargers look like one of the top teams in the league, maybe he can carve out a role, right? Maybe he takes over that tight end one spot on the Chargers. And so we would obviously be happy about that, right? But that's all I have for us this week. That's my top 24 tight ends. I'm going to put a link to our Discord in the comments or in the description below. Um, we do weekly rankings, obviously, but those will actually get changed should something happen, like an injury to Tucker Kraft, like it happened last week, stuff like that. We're changing those rankings as we go. If you're in the paid tier of our Discord, but the Discord itself is free, so feel free to join there. You can talk with all of us here at the Face Off Sports Network. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. And other than that, I look forward to talking to you guys next week.